Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome back to the Onyx Tavern Vlog series on Ressha Sentai ToQger. Today we will be covering Station 13, Run Fire Extinguisher. This episode is all over the map. There are a lot of things to talk about, and not many of them are particularly positive or really interesting. If anything, I would say that this is a filler episode. But there are a few things to go ahead and talk about, and we will go ahead and do that. Particularly, the main plot of this episode revolves around the team trying to find the newest support Ressha, in this particular case, the Fire Ressha, or Extinguisher Ressha. The weird thing is that it works as both a fire truck and an extinguisher within the episode, and there is a debate between the characters whether it's the Fire Ressha or the Extinguisher Ressha. But it sells on fire simply because that's what the toy is named. So I don't understand what the big difference is. It might have something to do where it's in Japanese language, and who knows. In any case, they're looking for the Fire Ressha in this episode. So that's kind of the main through line, and a few little things happen here and there. But I want to talk about the Fire Ressha in general here. Because once again, I'm still really confused on what's going on with the support Ressha and where they are. The thing I had about the Diesel Ressha when it first appeared is it was at a museum and it was on a track somewhere in the back. And for however long it had been there, years, decades, whatever, no one ever came across it. Its surrounding was never destroyed. It just sat there by itself this entire time. What's even more curious about the Fire Ressha is that it's not even its train form. Half of its form is missing. When Right and ToQger end up coming upon it, it's actually in its extinguisher form standing vertically up. Now, the question is, where is the other half of it exactly? And why is it in that particular position? Why is it not in its car position? And two, how long has it been there? Because we're talking about it being in a public space where supposedly it's invisible and it can phase through anybody who cannot go ahead and see it. Which brings up a point to where Right is actually standing at the top of it. I wonder if the people who are passing by are seeing him like just flying in midair. Again, the rules are not fully explained within this series, so what people are seeing, what people are feeling, how it got there to begin with, how long it has been there, just not answered in this episode, and hopefully again down the line we'll get some answers. But as it is right now, I don't understand why it was, where it was, and why it was split up into two different units. So that's one thing to go ahead and talk about. Now, of course, this episode also kind of serves as a character piece for Mio. In the episode, Right, for some reason, and I still can't quite explain why, is obsessed with eating all the food in this town, or really sampling all the delicious food that they have. And he's also... Here's the weird thing. So when they go, the main plot of the episode is to find the Fire Ressha. So that's his main thing. But while he's looking, he's also eating food. Then they happen to stumble over the Shadow Line's plan, and we'll get to the stupidity of that here in a second. And he is not even bothered with the plan. He just wants to look for the Fire Ressha and then also eat the food as well. Now, the way it kind of plays out is we do have a flashback of when Mio and Right were children, and Mio points out that one of the things she likes about him, and I don't think it's a romantic like, but I think just something that she finds interesting about him, is that when he focuses on a goal, that he is pretty much stubborn and pig-headed to a fault where he will only focus on that and ignore everything else around him. Now, that could be a positive quality or it could be a negative trait. It just kind of depends on how you view it. The episode tends to view it as a positive trait because it points out that Mio will, while Right's doing this thing, she'll take over and handle everything else that he's not focusing on. Which is kind of an odd message. I'm not really sure what they're trying to go ahead and say there, either about the characters, the relationship, or really if it's a morality play on what you should and should not be doing. Because ultimately, in the end, Mio steps in as almost a second in command for the team, even though that's something that had been discussed before and it really wasn't decided upon. And if it did, Takachi, he was the one who kind of became second command. I'll have to go back and rewatch that. Nevertheless, it talks about her being able to take command and actually succeed. And one of the interesting things about this episode is that 3 of the ToQgers are able to take out the monster by themselves. Without all 5, which I think is pretty good, because you got to be able to show the entire team working together to be successful. But I think if you can show the 3 other Rangers working together, you know, it works out well. It's something we don't see as often, I think, within Sentai and, of course, in Power Rangers. Usually when it's a one-on-one battle with a monster. So yeah, the whole character dynamic between Mio and Right, and how they kind of complement each other in a way. But I just can't help but take from this that Right's stubbornness to be single-minded and Mio's ability to pick up his slack or whatever he's not doing is being portrayed as positive, but really shouldn't be. So I don't know. It's a really odd thing that I can't fully wrap my head around, but maybe this will play into a later episode down the road. But we do know, I think the positive thing comes out of this is that Mio herself is able to stand up for herself and be a leader of the team when the team needs it. And I think that's significant. Let's talk about the villains a little bit, because we don't get much involvement with our main set. We, of course, get Baron Nero. He's, you know, really upset still about Zet and his fascination with the light. Zet is really falling in love with Greta, and he keeps talking about how her eyes sparkle, and I wonder if that is some sort of indication about the inner goodness that she has, or the potential of her to, you know, switch sides in the season. Because we've seen that with a couple of villains where they'll defect because there's good within them and so forth, and I just wonder if again, because the only things that he says has sparkled within the series have been those aligned with good and innocence and purity and all that. And Greta could be within that category, but we just don't know. So I don't know what that line particularly means right now, but I think it may pay off later down the line. And he really seems to love her, and Greta not so much. But we do get indication that General Schwartz understands Greta's feelings towards him. He actually returns the handkerchief to her and say that her feelings will be rewarded down the line. Now, whether that's a coup d'etat, they're going to throw it over Empress Zet, whether she's going to actually get with Schwartz down the line or whatever, that's for us to go ahead and see. But for that particular scene, nice little moment, I think, with the villains. And it's always hard to actually get emotion and good stories from the costume villains, even with Zet on the set. Sorry, didn't mean to make that rhyme, but even with Zet there, basically, these villains are really showing some emotions and some love triangles and politics and all that, and I really particularly like that. A couple of other small notes right here. The ToQger. I like how the beginning of the episode really establishes that they've had onslaught of battles, and they've immediately gone to the ultimate combination every time. But Tick and Conductor point out you can't do that every single time. And I kind of like that, because it's always like whenever we see battles in previous Sentai and Power Rangers, it's always been, let's go to this combination immediately and every time, just because it's most powerful, it's going to help us win the battle quicker. But the fact that they actually put an explanation here, you can't use it all the time because it's, you know, you're overusing, you're wearing it out, I really like that. And I can't think of, just off the top of my head, any other time that an explanation like that has been given. So props to the ToQger writing staff for putting that in there, so at least we have a justification moving forward why they can't use it every single time. So that's really good. Let's talk about the villain's plan for a second, because it really doesn't make any sense, both in its execution and in the context of what the villains use and they try to acquire. Because consider this. Loop Shadow is the villain. What's his plan? To paint buildings black so that they can absorb more light and energy and can easily be destroyed by his magnifying glass, which amplifies light. Let me repeat that. Amplifies light. So, a villain force whose main goal is to collect darkness and cover the world in darkness is using light as a weapon to destroy their enemies. that seems very odd to me that they would actually do that and there would actually be a character like that. I mean, we know there's Lamp Shadow, and that Lamp Shadow points out to Right that all the other shadow monsters have been used to create darkness, but he has been designed to create light. Dark light at it, but still, he's the only one of his kind at that point. That made him unique. Loop Shadow seems to be in that same vein, but uses light as a weapon. And I just find it odd that we have villains that are based in darkness using light as a weapon. But even that being said, his plan is stupid, because it's based off a childhood premise. Basically, if you color in a piece of paper black, that it'll ignite quicker when used with a magnifying glass. And I know that when you're doing roofing and all that, if you use black tiles, it's going to attract more heat. If you're going to use white tiles, it's going to deflect more heat. Same thing with football jerseys. That's why Miami today was wearing white jerseys down in Florida, because, you know, it's hot and they want to deflect the heat. I get all that. But from what we see of Loop Shadow to begin with, he should be able to destroy the buildings by himself without even having to paint anything black. And further, painting it black actually did nothing, because they paint the buildings black, and then Loop Shadow ignites them, and they are on fire. But by the time that Right comes in with the fire Ressha, he extinguishes the buildings, and yet there's no damage to them. So not only did Loop Shadow actually succeed in nothing, he actually proved the point of darkness that light has no power over darkness. And I wonder if that was the point. Now, it could be the technical department, you know, kind of messed up in the effects, because we see when Loop Shadow actually ignites it, there are explosions, but when the fire is put out, the buildings are perfectly fine, no damage whatsoever, even though they had to be burning for several minutes, at least. Again, we don't know how compressed time and space is within the actual episode itself, but for several minutes of screen time, they were burning before the fire Ressha got there. So the plan was stupid, makes no sense. The only reason I can think that it may have been in there was to point out how light is ineffective to darkness, fitting the overall theme of the Shadow line, but beyond that, I just didn't make any sense. Yeah, well, that's pretty much it. Again, this was a filler episode. There wasn't much to it. I don't think we learned too much about Mio, so I mean, it wasn't a bad episode, just there wasn't anything significant or of substance into it. I guess it's kind of like a Twinkie episode in a way. Who knows? But in any case, we will return next time with Station 14, and we will go ahead and discuss what happens in that episode. So I look forward to seeing it. Otherwise, have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.